What's up guys, it's Kaisen here again and welcome back to our Path of Exile tutorial. One thing that I wanted to mention is that if you guys have been following the tutorial from the start and maybe you decided to level up with me while watching the different episodes, the areas that we already explored, and if you went through them, you might have encountered some monsters that I didn't show you and that I did not explain and highlight yet. The reason for that being is that there are random monster spawns in pretty much every area of the game. So if I wanted to account for every single possible monster type that you can encounter up to this point, I would have to reset all of the areas a couple of times until I encounter every single one. So I personally think that's not really feasible. It would just take way too much time. So if you encounter any monsters that you haven't seen in any of the tutorials, just be a bit more careful, see what kind of attack patterns they have before you engage, maybe a big pack of them. But generally speaking, at this point of the game, you shouldn't really have too many issues with any of these monsters, because they're all pretty harmless. So, if you think that's not correct, and there's a particular monster type that you had a lot of problems with, just leave a comment, and I'll definitely try to say something about that particular monster type in a later episode. But overall, I think you should be fine. And yeah, I hope if that's what you're doing, I hope you're enjoying the game so far. Now, some of you might say, so you picked up this weapon in the last episode, and why do you leave it white? Why don't you use some of your currency to actually improve on it? And to a certain extent, it's a fair point. I could use an Orb of Transmutation on it, and I might even increase the damage that I do with that staff. The reason that I'm not doing it is because I know for a fact that I will soon find another upgrade, especially when you're leveling. And let's say, I would say all the way up until level maybe 35 to 40, you will relatively easily find upgrades for weapons, for armor, and you should try to hold on to as much of your currency as possible. If you want to use any currency, and by currency I do not mean alchemies, you should mostly save up your alchemies. I mean maybe transmutations, maybe alterations. You should do it on rings, on maybe amulets and belts. I wouldn't really do it on any of the other armor pieces or a weapon. The only exception is if they have really good sockets and links. Then maybe. But in this case, this weapon only has one socket. It is level 9, I'm already level 11. It's easily possible that I find a better weapon with a better base. Let's say it requires level 12 or 13 in the next zone. So using the Orb of Transmutation on this weapon right now, to me, it seems to be somewhat wasteful. Okay, so another thing that I wanted to talk about is rare items and what we should do with them in terms of do you identify them or do you save your scrolls of wisdom? I sadly don't have an unidentified rare item, but what I can tell you guys is if you can sell an unidentified rare item and you will get 5 shards of transmutation for it. So if we go here, those ones, you get 5 transmutation shards, which is quite a bit. I mean, you get 2 for magic items, so you could think about doing that. I would not recommend you guys doing it, simply because if you identify the item, you will get alteration shards, and alteration shards are worth more than transmutation shards, And on top of that, from my experience, if you sell identified rare items, you will get on average more than 5 shards. Sometimes you will just get 1 or 2, but in most of the cases you will get more than 5. For example, I identified 2 items here. And you can see that if we sell this one right here, we get 11 shards. So that's more than double, simply because alteration shards are more valuable than transmutation. So just by investing a scroll of wisdom, you more than doubled the value that you get off the item, although you can't really use it yourself. And this one that we identified, there's actually something interesting about it, so I want to go into a bit more detail here. It has +1 to level of socketed fire gems. Now this is something interesting when you, and actually really powerful, when you have an attack or a skill that you use that is classified as a fire gem. And the way you know that it is if you hover over the skill gem, and right on top you see, well, it's called Spectral Throw, and then the second line it says projectile and attack. So these two classify the item. On other items you find different things. Here, for example, you find AoE and melee on top of attack. Here you have trap, spell, and duration as well. So for a skill to get that +1 level, it has to have fire on there. I don't think I have anything like this on my gear. Oh, here we go. So Burning Arrow would get +1 to level. The problem here is that it is red sockets and this is a green gem. So I would have to change the color of sockets, which you can do with an orb that we have not found yet. And by getting that +1 level, that obviously increases the power of the gem even further. So if you find items like this, they can be potentially really powerful. In this particular case, it's not really worthwhile mentioning, and especially for our build, it's nothing special, so we're just gonna sell it. Oh, that's good. That's something else to talk about. At some point in an earlier episode, I mentioned that there's a certain amount of attributes that an item can have. Obviously, a white item has no attributes. It just has an implicit value. If you go one step further and you look at the magic item, a magic item can have 2 attributes, 1 prefix and 1 suffix. Let's see if we have something here. For example, my belt only has a prefix. I could use, let's put this back in, I could use an Orb of Augmentation to give my belt an additional attribute. In this case, did I say suffix for strength? It is a prefix, so I could give this item a suffix as well. Now, if we're going to rare items can have up to 6 attributes, and these 6 attributes are 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes. And this becomes really, really important later on in the game when you try to create your own items. So in this case, this item has the full amount of 6 attributes. Let's see if we can figure out which these are. We have +1 to level, that's one. We have spell damage, we have fire damage, we have attack speed, we have mana, and then we have, I hope I'm not confusing this, and then we have one that is some sort of a hybrid, which gives you both stun and accuracy. So stun duration and accuracy rating. So overall you have 6 attributes on this item. And if you find a rare item with 6 attributes on them, once you sell it, you get an orb of augmentation. So that's another vendor recipe, and we should probably get a message. Yep, here we go. So that's the vendor recipe that we just discovered. So now let's put this back in. I actually want to identify this magic item as well. Simply because look at the evasion rating. This is 80 evasion, and I said before that in terms of the numbers, or in terms of I guess let's leave it at numbers. So if you just compare numbers, armor and evasion, you have roughly 20 against roughly 80. So this one would clearly be better. We have some nice stats on our rare item with life regen, and some lightning resist on there. But if I identify this item and, for example, I get a life roll and a resistance roll, this would be clearly better. And I also have better links. I have 2 green and they're linked. So there's a lot of factors to take into account when deciding whether or not you should identify an item, and whether or not you always have to think about which stats does the item have to have for it to be better than what I'm currently wearing, and how likely is it that that will be the case. So let's just have a look. Well, it has life and a resistance, but both of these rolls are really low. You could argue that the high evasion rating makes it worthwhile to put this one on. I won't at this point, but I actually will keep it simply because of the links. If at some point I need a green and I might not be wearing this anymore, I can always put this on and use it for one of my skills. One last thing here in town before we move on and get back into the actual gameplay is the vendors in town. And I showed you guys already what Nessa sells. What I wanted to just highlight here is that with every single level up of your character, the vendors will have new items. So right now, whoops, that was the wrong. Right now I'm level 11, and if I would leave town and I would, fight some monsters and come back and I'm still level 11, those items have not changed. But once I turn level 12, they will offer new items. So it makes sense to, once you have a level up, come back and have a look at the items and see if there's something that is interesting to your character. Sometimes you will really find a good upgrade to what you have, what you're wearing right now. I can't find anything on here, and I said already, you pretty much have the jewelry and flasks and belts on here, and one type of weapon, which is wands. And then Tarley, the other vendor in town, basically sells everything else. He sells every other weapon apart from wands, and he sells the rest of the gear, the rest of the armor that you might need. So let's see if we can find something that would potentially be interesting. And then even if you find something that looks interesting, you always have to see how much does it cost. You can see that there's different prices. Some just cost 1 scroll of wisdom, but that's mostly white items. Some go for an armor scrap, and some for orb of transmutation, and some even, like this one, for 2 orbs. This might actually be an upgrade to the weapon that I have right now, but as I said earlier, I think I will find an upgrade relatively soon, so I don't want to invest 2 orbs of transmutation to temporarily get a weapon that is a tiny bit better than the one I have right now. The only thing I want to stress here is that it makes sense to check the vendors from time to time. For example, if I would find, let's say this item, instead of 6 energy shield, had a good life roll and a good resistance roll on it. It would be interesting, and it would make sense to consider to buy it because it would make your character a lot better in terms of survivability. So yeah, that's basically the point. Check the vendors from time to time, and we'll actually get back to that in a few levels because there's something else that is interesting on the vendors as well. But we'll get to that shortly. For now, we should get back to the storyline because we still haven't made it to Brutus, and we'll get back to the prison and go from there. Alright, so we're back at the prison, and here we have brittle poachers, and you can see they fire lightning arrows. Lightning arrow is another skill gem that in this case they use, and down at the bottom you can already see that there's something even more interesting going on, and we'll make our way here. This is another shrine. We should kill this necro, and as I mentioned earlier, you can see that because we're close to a shrine, there's more monsters around. The monster density is higher. Let's level ground slam. Now this shrine here casts shock nova, and okay, I think I am lagging here. Yeah, I definitely have some. Oh yeah, okay. You can see that my attacks are not immediate, so my game is lagging behind quite a bit, which is somewhat of a problem in Path of Exile. It is they haven't really been able to resolve this issue, and there's a lot of deaths also from really good players just due to lag and desync in the game. So coming back to this one, if I step into this ring, there's a chance that I get shocked. There's actually shocking ground here as well. So if I stand on this shocking ground, I will have a shock stack on me, which means every opponent that attacks me while standing here, I will take increased damage, which is very dangerous depending on the mobs that might attack you in this area. Again, the same as with the shrine that we encountered before. If you click on it, it basically gives you the ability yourself. So now I'm shocking. So I don't even have to tech anything. I can just stand here, and as long as they go, yep, they have the right distance from my character, they take damage and just die without me doing anything. So this is the really cool feature of shrines. As long as you manage to not die approaching them, you can really use them to progress through the game faster and more efficiently. Alright. Okay, this is pretty nice. We finally found one of the areas that I was actually really excited about when they came out. So the thing you see here, if you open this loose crate, you can basically enter an area that is a so-called corrupted area, and within these corrupted areas, they're like little maps, little zones that you sometimes can randomly find in the normal zones of the game, and they are, as I said with the Haku zones, they are one level above the zone that you're in. So here's monster level 9. This will be monster level 10. And also they have attributes on them. So as you could already see when we were outside, you could read it there or right here. There's 2 attributes on them, as on any magic item as well. A 20% increased monster life, so they will be more durable, and the area yields 12% more items. So if you find an area with attributes on it, then in most cases one of them will be good, one of them will be bad. So one of them will make the monsters in the area more dangerous or just more durable, and the other one will either increase the loot drop or anything like that. So and on top of that, they're usually really interesting. there is a boss at the end of each one, and you can get certain skill gems that are um, rather special if you compare them to the normal ones. But we'll get to that in a bit. So in here we have Ashen Buccaneers, nothing new, we already knew them. And we have Vaal Fallen, and they afflict elemental status effects. So that means their attacks basically can be of any element. They could, if they hit you, that could make you burn. It could chill you or even freeze you, depending on how big the hit is. Or you could get shocked. I'm just seeing if actually any of that will happen. Let's kill one of them and let's see if the other one is better. So, in that sense, they're pretty dangerous because if we're looking at our character screen and we have resistances right here, so you can collect resistance against a certain element, but against those guys, you basically have to have all three. Otherwise, if they get a lucky hit and it's the wrong resistance, you will take quite a bit of damage. Now here we found another monster type, a spectral bowman. They are, in terms of, they deal lightning damage, but they use puncture, and we've seen that before with the hounds, the dogs. So let's get rid of this one. If they actually apply that puncture, then again you have the problem with, you know, running away from a sticky situation. Come on. This when I'm trying to show things, they're apparently my enemies are not really playing into my favor. So I can't really do that. Come on, just hit me. Oh, here we go. Okay, so again, I would use quite a bit of life, but my life regen at this point is so strong that it does nothing to me. But again, puncture, really dangerous thing, and you should definitely watch out for that. Here we encountered a rare mob. I'm just gonna get rid of the other bowman. A rare mob with extra projectiles, which also is a pretty dangerous mod on any enemy, especially if they fire projectiles. And I'm not even sure that this mod could be on an enemy that does not. So as you can see, the normal bowman usually we're shooting one arrow, and because this guy has extra projectiles, he fires 3. On one hand, this increases the chance, you know, if he hits you with more than one, it increases the chance that the on-hit effect, so in this case puncture, will actually take place. And just in terms of damage, if you're too close to him or if he hits you with more than one, he will obviously deal more damage to you. So also in combination with powerful crits, this is really dangerous. And there's some mobs in the game that if they have extra projectiles, you can't face tank them. You have to be really careful. Now we reached the end of this little zone, and if you look at the map, you can see that it was pretty small. And here we have the boss of this corrupted zone. Every corrupted zone has a certain boss. In this case, it is an archer. I'm not 100% sure what his name is, and obviously there is a blue pack as well. So again, like the Haku zones, with the boss of the zone, you have a blue pack, which makes it even more dangerous than just the boss. So you know, you might want to get rid of the blue pack first again. And what is his name? Koniraya, the Shadow of Malice. That's the boss here. He has fast attacks, extra projectiles, puncture. So basically the same as his, you know, the smaller ones here. He has some different attacks though. He uses split arrow. That's what he's using right now, and rain of arrows. So in that case, he is close to Iron Beak. But if he uses rain of arrows, let's use rain of. Oh no, it is actually extra projectiles puncture. Okay, so if he uses his rain of arrows, you can see that where his rain of arrows hits, he shocks the ground. So that means if you're just standing still and he does his rain of arrows on you, and then attacks you afterwards, you are shock stacked, so you're taking extra damage. And that, in combination with the puncture, makes him quite dangerous. In my case, again, he's not doing anything to me just because I am really tanky right now. I have a lot of life regen, so I could just stand here and take his shots for a while. But just, don't be mistaken. He's quite dangerous, especially if you're not moving away from the shock ground, and if you're not paying attention when you actually have the puncture on you. But let's just finish him off. Oh, and we actually got a jeweler and another spectral throw. Wow. Okay. So let's talk about jewelers, actually. Jeweler is another orb, and it reforges the number of sockets on an item. So that should be relatively self-explanatory. For example, you know what? Let's actually. I'll talk about this a bit later, simply because I wanna say something about the requirements for a certain amount of sockets, and for that I just have to do a quick research, and I'll be back. Okay, so here we are again. What I did was I went on the Path of Exile wiki, which the link to the wiki you can find in the description below, and there's an article on item level, and one one category there is what item level affects. As I mentioned earlier, the highest values of attributes on items, so prefixes and suffixes, are affected by it, and also the number of sockets that you can get on any given item. So that means if I have an item, I'm just going to give you the numbers. So if you want 2 sockets on an item, or 1 socket on an item, you can always get that, because the level requirement for 2 sockets and 1 sockets on an item is level 1. So every single item you get can have up to 2 sockets. If you want 3 sockets on an item, which we have not found a single item that has 3 sockets yet, the item level has to be at least 15. And now this goes on. For 4 it has to be 28, for 5 it has to be 35, and for 6 it has to be 50. And you have to take this into account when you use one of these orbs, because let's say you leveled your character to level, let's say level 50, and you have an item that you want to use this orb on. You always should check the item level of that item before you use it, before you use the jewelers, just to make sure that the item can get the number of sockets that you're actually looking for. So in our case, I don't know, if we wanted to use it on our chest piece, and we would, once again type in /item level, I showed you this before, then it tells us this is item level 7. And if you go into the list, that means the maximum level of sockets here can be 2. So we could use it on it, and we would probably get 2, because I think the number that it already has is not repeated if you use it on it. Don't quote me on that. That's just something that I heard. So in general, if you find an item, let's say an item that has an item level of higher than 50, so from that list you know that this item can have 6 sockets on it. It's possible. But you find this item and it only has 1. It makes a lot of sense to use a jeweler's on this item, because although you might not get 6 sockets, by the way, it is on this item, this particular item, it is really rare to get 1 or 6 sockets. It is much more common to get 2 or 3, or even 4. So it makes a lot of sense to use that jeweler's orb on it, because you will, in almost 100% of the cases, you will end up with more than 1 socket. So that's what you have to think about when you use this item. Now, I made my way to the end of this area where the boss was, and the magic pack as well. And once you cleared out the rest, you actually just have to defeat the boss. Once you defeat the boss, you're able to open this Vaal vessel, and what's inside is one of two things. Either you find a Vaal gem, which is this here precisely, or you find some sort of a fragment of a map. And we'll talk about this once we find one of them. So what we found here was, we can compare this because we already have Ground Slam. So we have Ground Slam and we have Vaal Ground Slam, and you can see that it says corrupted on it, and it's slightly different. So this one slams the ground in front of the character with the main weapon, creating a wave and increased chance to stun. Well, okay, the description is pretty much the same, but the damage is different. For example, here we have 100% increased knockback distance. I'm not even sure what exactly that means, to be honest. And here we have 80% base damage, and this is already leveled to level 4. And here we have 150% base damage. It knocks away enemies on hit. So the aspects of this Vaal gem are different from the the normal equivalent, and in most cases they are somewhat more powerful than their normal counterparts. What makes them different from what makes this one, for example, different from Ground Slam is that you cannot use them all the time. So if I would put this one in, you can see here that I cannot use it, and it says not enough souls. What that means is I have to collect souls, a certain amount of souls, in this case 64, before I can actually use this item. How do I collect souls? I just kill enemies, I kill monsters, and with every monster that you kill, you collect a soul. So that means in a given area you have to first kill a certain amount of enemies before you can even use this gem. And that's part of the reasoning why they're more powerful in most cases, because the requirement to use them is obviously higher, and it takes quite a bit more to load them up, so to say. And then once you used it once, and I haven't really tested Vaal Ground Slam, so I'm not exactly sure what it does, but once you use it once, you basically get rid of all the souls. It uses them up, and then you have to start from zero again. And one more thing about these is that you have to collect those souls in one area. As soon as you leave one area and go to the next, the amount of souls resets to 0. So you can't just go through multiple zones and then at some point you collect the amount of souls and you can use it. It has to be in that same area. Hey guys, I'm recording this bit after actually having defeated Brutus already. I did get to Brutus, but I didn't want to pack all of it in one episode because it would have been roughly around 1 hour. So I divided the episode into 2 parts, and this is the end of the first part. So I want to thank you all for watching so far. We just finished exploring the corrupted zone, and we will, in the next episode, we will go all the way until Brutus and fight Brutus. So thanks for watching. Please like the video if you enjoyed the content, and follow the channel to support me, and I'll see you guys next time.